Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli, the computer guy, over here for the Daily Blob, where we say, wow, holy crap, they have a lot of revenue. Damn, that's a lot of revenue. So with all of that revenue, I mean, like, what's their profit? They're not saying anything about their profit. So they're just talking about 13 or 20 billion dollars in annual revenue. They're talking about 8.3 billion dollars in added investment, and nowhere are they talking about profit. Houston, we might have a problem here. Anyways, I think this is an interesting story to talk about the absolute insane amount of money in the AI world, right? We talk about artificial intelligence, and they talk about how AI is going to be the future of everything. More dangerous than nuclear weapons. It's going to put us all out of work, and the whole 9 yards. One of the things that I keep raising my hand about, though, is this whole question about things like profitability. And I do think this is an interesting story because they talk about some really big numbers here for OpenAI. I don't see anything about profit. I'm not even being snarky. Yeah, I don't, nothing about profit here. So this might be a wee bit of a concern. So this is coming from CNBC. OpenAI raises another $8.3 billion as paid chat GPT business users reach 5 million. So I'm a paid user. I use it for those amazing featured images you see on my thumbnails, right? So they're up to 5 million users on that. So you pay anywhere between $20 to $200 per month. So I guess they get a lot of revenue from that and from their things like their APIs. And basically, they got another funding round here. OpenAI has secured $8.3 billion in new capital as part of its $40 billion fundraise, according to a person familiar with the transaction. So I just want you to listen to all these numbers. Listen to the numbers. Let me tell you what the numbers mean. And this is where I talk about things like with employees, right? All of these worthless employees are being laid off right now. And people get mad. People get mad when I call them worthless employees, but they are worthless employees. When you're dumping tens of thousands of employees at a time, that basically means there's no value to those employees. But one of the things I talked about before, right, is that these tech companies, right, they had to prove that they were successful. If they didn't have profit and they didn't have revenue, and user growth was starting to get really wiggly, how do you go to investors to prove that you're worth a lot of money, right? You start putting asses in seats. That's what we saw during the COVID crisis. All of a sudden, these companies were hiring tens of thousands of tech employees, and it did not make any sense at that time, right? Normal businesses scale what's called linearly. Technology businesses generally scale what's called exponentially. You need one tech employee to administer a server. You need two to administer 100 servers. You need 3 to administer 1,000 servers. You need 4 to administer 10,000 servers. That's how we scale, right? And so when you hear, oh, everybody's going to like work from home, and so Meta needs to grow and AWS needs to grow and those companies need to grow. I'm not saying that they didn't need to hire people, but they didn't need to hire 10,000 people. Like, I was screaming about this during COVID. This was fucking idiotic. And so, not exactly shocked, not exactly surprised when everything blows up now. And like Intel in the past year and a half is trying to get rid of 40,000 employees. Microsoft dumping 16,000 employees this year alone, right? All of these companies are just dumping tens of thousands of employees because the employees did what they were hired for. The employees, right, were there to make the company look like it was growing. They used that to get investment money for a while. That's no longer working, so now they get thrown away. Oh, you thought you were getting hired to be a node developer? I'm sorry, you actually think node's that valuable? No. Your pretty little ass was that valuable. So anyways, it's interesting how they throw like numbers around and how you look at metrics. And so what's curious here is now we've all been told, we all know that AI is invaluable, right? Sam Altman, I talked about this the other day. Sam Altman is saying OpenAI has deployed something like 1 million GPUs already, and he wants to 100x it. 100 million GPUs. Because obviously, everybody knows how valuable this is. The thing that I want to point out with a lot of this is they're not talking about profit. They're talking about investment. They're even talking about revenue. It's kind of funny that they're not talking about profit. All businesses need profit, or at least the expectation that they can be profitable. And that's one of my big concerns with AI. You look at xAI with their deployments. You look at OpenAI with their deployments. You look at Anthropic. You look at Mistral. You look at so much AI infrastructure being deployed. And I've got to tell you, somebody, like every time there's a boom bust cycle, I go back and I read about the Gilded Age or other times like that. You don't think about the canal boom. Right? Think about this for a second. Like, when was the last time you thought about the canal boom? Like, you mean that place where I go running with my dog in the morning? Yeah, canals, right? There was a massive canal boom in the United States when canals were the best way to get from point A to point B. And there was so much investment into canals, and they built so many canals, but they started building more canals than the country actually needed, and a lot of them went bankrupt. They went belly up. The railroad, right? The railroad boom bust cycle. They were putting down so much railway. At one point, again, to get investor money, they were laying down railways basically to nowhere, literally railways to nowhere, right? They could go to the investors and they could say, we have laid 100 miles of railway in the past month. In order to lay the next 200 miles of railway, we need your money. And you know how valuable railways are. Well, yeah, I mean, if you connect Chicago and New York, that's valuable. If you connect, I don't know, Duluth and some village of 5,000 people, not so much. But there was investor demand. They wanted to be part of the railway boom. And so we had the railway boom and the bus cycle. The same thing with telegraph wire. The same thing as with fiber optics during the dot-com boom, right? So much money. Brick and mortar stores are dead. Remember? Well, some of you guys weren't even alive. Some of you guys and girls weren't alive. But they literally said brick and mortar stores were dead. Dot-com is the future. And so they dumped all this money because they thought people were going to be shipping 40-pound things of dog food. And to be clear, in 1999, that didn't make sense. I will admit, can I admit something? Sometimes you just got to wait a little while. Roxy, our dog is vegan. We literally buy V-Dog. Okay, I'll admit it. I get my dog food shipped to my house. It just, sometimes it takes longer. Sometimes it takes longer to get to the future than you realize, right? Were people shipping dog food in 1999? Hell no. Were people shipping dog food in 2025? Yeah. So they were just 26 years ahead of the curve. But you got to be thinking about businesses, right? That's being 26 years ahead of the curve. You can be technically right, just not at the right time period. But anyways, right? So yeah, OpenAI has secured $8.3 billion in new capital as part of its $40 billion fundraise. Annual recurring revenue jumped to $13 billion, up from $10 billion in June, said the person who spoke on condition of anonymity, and is projected to top $20 billion by the end of the year. $8.3 billion in investment on a $40 billion round, $13 billion of annualized revenue, up from $10 billion, is probably going to be $20 billion. Look at all these numbers that are not profit. None of these numbers are profit. Anyways, Dragoneer Investment Group contributed $2.8 billion to the round, the person said, joining Blackstone, TPG, T. Rowe Price, Fidelity, Founders Fund, Sequoia, Anderson Horowitz, Coatue, Alameda, D1 Capital, Tiger Global, and Thrive Capital. While Dragoneer was the largest investor in the latest tranche of funding, SoftBank remains the lead backer of the broader $40 billion fundraising effort. Oh, that bodes well. I mean, when SoftBank is the largest investor in a round, we all know how that works out. Anyways, so yeah, that is where we currently are at with OpenAI. It is interesting to think about, right? $13 billion in annualized revenue, right? Them getting another $40 billion round of investment. And so we are going to get more and more artificial intelligence deployed. The question that I keep coming back to, though, is what is the practical use case for a lot of this? I pay $20 a month because for $20 a month, in order to create thumbnail images, It's kind of a no-brainer, but I don't use it for much more than that. You know, being in the technology world, when I do write code, it is useful for, you know, if I can't remember the syntax, right, where that semicolon, you know, is it a semicolon or is it a comma or whatever, that kind of stuff is valuable there. But I have to say, after 2.5 years of ChatGPT being around, the actual value proposition as a technology professional is there. And I want you to understand that there is value there, but is it that much value? I think is an interesting question. The other question I asked too is that if you're looking at OpenAI, if they're going to end 2025 with $20 billion in annualized revenue, one of the other questions there is that an opening for lower cost competitors to come in, right? That's one of the problems with first mover advantage. Many times first movers spend a hell of a lot of money to prove anybody cares about what they're offering, right? It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of trial and error to simply come up with something that people actually care about, right? That burns through your war chest of resources. And many times what happens is the second and third movers, they basically watch everything that you've done. They learn all of your lessons, but it costs them no money to learn those lessons. And then they come in as that second or third mover and they have the advantage. They can build off of what you burned billions of dollars to figure out. And so one of the questions here, and this is one of the things I've talked about before, is, you know, how valuable are these new models, right? OpenAI is coming out with GPT-5 soonish, whatever. Apparently it's magical. Sam Altman declares it's magical, whatever. But one of my questions is, okay, this is going to be a very expensive model to run as far as these models are concerned. Do you actually need magic? I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't need magic. I just need tasks to be accomplished. I just need to be able to make my request. I need to get a response that's in a format I can parse worth a damn. And that's all I need, right? 3.5 turbo, right? If 3.5 turbo can do that for me, I'm fine with using 3.5 turbo. This is not a car. This is not a car. It's not like, oh, I may be driving my Porsche at 35 miles an hour, but people know I can afford a Porsche, right? There's value there. Like nobody gives a fuck whether you're using 3.5 turbo or whether you're using 5, as long as the output is something that is actually useful. And that's one of my big questions is, you know, you see with GPT-5 coming out, but we see these open source models coming out of China, right? So, DeepSeek and whatever, the ones that are coming out there. And again, the question being is, are those good enough for what people actually need? We see the, not quite open source, but the stuff that Meta has come out with, the Llama models, which basically anybody can use for commercial purposes as long as they have less than 700 million monthly users, right? Not open source, but practically, you know, it's fine. You know, does that actually serve the purpose that the most users want? Running Ollama on a local system, will that provide the actual, again, the output that people find useful for basically almost no cost? I think that's going to be an interesting thing going forward, is basically where does the value for these products kind of end? Where does the value plateau? And so as they invest more and more money, is that actually being invested into a company or offerings that will be able to provide that profit back? And I'm highly questionable about it, and especially just there being so much competition. You know, you have XAI out there, right? XAI, so you have Elon Musk with XAI doing whatever the fuck Elon Musk does. Hey, the one thing Elon Musk does, he builds shit. Or he gets shit built. The one thing you have to say about Elon Musk is crap does get built around him, right? So he's building AI stuff. You've got Meta, right? Mark Zuckerberg, for some dumbass reason, thinks that Meta should be the leader in AI. I still don't understand why, but whatever. Then again, you have OpenAI. They're doing their thing. Mistral is doing their thing. Anthropic is doing their thing. Baidu is doing their thing. Tencent is doing their thing. You got the other Chinese companies that are doing their thing. Just think about all of this investment in the AI world, and then just sit back for a second. Just sit back for a second and think about it. You've been using this stuff for about 2-3 years now. Like, I'm not saying there's not use here, but is it that valuable? That is the question. So what do you think about this? What do you think about OpenAI going to be finishing the year theoretically at a $20 billion annualized rate of revenue? What do you think about this new $40 billion round and the tranche? So you have rounds. So the round is the overall round and there's tranches within the round. What do you think about this tranche being at $8.3 billion? What do you think about SoftBank leading the $40 billion round? Does that make you feel more comfortable or maybe not? I don't know. Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. Say an amazing comment or say a horrible comment. Remember, in the modern world of YouTube, all that matters is that interaction. Do remember at silicondojo.com, we are currently doing fireside chats. Next week, we're having the CTO and co-founder of an integrations company come on. He's going to be talking about how they try to integrate artificial intelligence into their systems and how well or not that worked. So that should be a good conversation. And the week after, we are going to have the VP for AI models for IBM on. He is going to be explaining what the hell IBM is currently doing with AI, what their vision for models and all that kind of stuff is. I actually think it's interesting. I actually think what IBM is doing is interesting, which is also kind of weird that you don't hear about it a lot. So anyways, he's going to be on. You go to silicondojo.com. You can become a member. You can RSVP for these fireside chats. And when you're on the fireside chat, you can ask questions. And you have little conversations amongst everybody that's in the chat. You know how fucking Zoom works. So anyways, silicondojo.com. And with that, see y'all later.